The second book, The Change Ninja Returns, is all about personal change. Because when it's something that will directly impact on you, it's much harder to make the right decisions, it's much harder to know what to do, it's much easier to procrastinate. So the second book is much more around the real personal stuff. And it is a true story. It's my story of going through a big personal change. If all of these tools I teach and this neuroscience really works for change in the workplace, then it will really work for change in the home life when things aren't going so well.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Dandar.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Thank you so much for joining me today on this particular episode. I have somebody who is a prolific author. She's written 2 books, third on its way, and I'm super excited to talk to Tammy. Tammy, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You are welcome. And Tammy, when I heard the title of this new book, I was like instantly hooked. But what is the superpower you're going to bring to this particular episode?
I've decided on expanding time.
Nice. We could always do with that, couldn't we? There's never enough hours.
We all need more time.
Yeah, never enough hours in the day. So I like that. I think that's a superpower that could help every one of us on this planet. So this is an episode for everybody. And so, Tammy, in terms of your background, tell us a little bit more about you.
I worked in the health service, National Health Service, for about 17 years, trying to lead change from projects, programs, developing strategy, lastly to innovation. The health service is incredibly hard to change. I failed an awful lot. And then I started to work in different ways. I learned a lot from Professor Eddie Obeng. Started working on his 4D immersive space called Cube. And all of a sudden, the penny dropped. And it was all about change and people, not change in process and methodology. So I learned from that failure, decided to leave and work for myself. And ever since then, I've been creating the Change Ninja concept.
So like the Kung Fu style ninja.
But
Yeah.
only for good. You only use it for good things.
Got it. Well, my wife works for the NHS, so I have a little bit of insight into the sort of the things that go on in the background and just how crazy it can be.
The pain.
She's forever complaining about stuff. So I'm like her little agony aunt sometimes just...
She needs to come on my course.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Look at that. Upsell straight away. We'll definitely talk about that separately. And so in terms of that journey of, I guess, frustration at times.
Yeah, a lot of frustration, a lot of losing your energy and your mojo, hence the expanding time because you run out of steam to do the good stuff. And just the constant battles, the fighting all the time to get anything done. When it's your job to do it and the strategy is to do it, but nobody wants to do it. It's just, hard work.
Yeah, I can imagine. And when we talk about change in this context, are we talking about project work or beyond project work?
I think it's beyond project work. Projects quite often don't have very clear definitions of problems that they're trying to solve or success stories that they're trying to achieve. So there's those elements of project that need a bit of this new thinking, I think. But we're all facing change every day. It's constant. And we all, I keep hearing the word change fatigue, and I don't believe it's real because life is about change and change is there all the time. It's only change fatigue when it's change that you don't like and it's sapping your mojo and energy. So I think it's the approach to change that needs to change, not stopping change. I think because it's never going to go away, especially with the way the world's, it just gets faster and faster. So I think we need to think about it in a different way.
And what prompted you to write the first book? Because taking that step to actually take a frustration and write a whole book on it, there must have been a trigger at some point? Like, what was that moment?
Well, I like humour. I think bringing stories and humour into things can really help. We probably laugh at things a little bit too much sometimes. But I had all of these really, really entertaining stories, which if you took the frustration and the moment out of it, were really funny. I mean, some of it is just ludicrous what happens in some big organisations. But there are a gazillion books on change and project management. There's lots of academic tomes. No one wants to read that stuff. And it's really hard to implement even if you do read it. So I wanted to turn it into something a bit more fun. And then I came across the Choose Your Own Adventure idea. I used to love Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid. I don't know if you ever read them.
Oh yeah, I love them.
So it's like it's not up to me to tell you how to do something, but I can guide you and steer you towards thinking about it in different ways so that you make the right decision for you. So the book is all about you make the decision. There's a crunch point. You have to decide what to do. And then it leads into the next element of the story and a tool of how you might approach that. And suddenly it became a really, really fun activity to do. I got to say all the things without saying anything bad about anyone in particular. Because it was all about my failings. This is what happened to me. They're real stories. This is how I got it wrong. This is how I would do it differently next time.
And who would you say would get value out of this book? Are there certain roles, professions?
I mean, I was a project manager for a long time, and change managers, I think, would definitely benefit from it because they're trying to convince people that their change is the right change. But we're all going through change all of the time. Some of us say we like change, but we tend to only like the change that we know is going to be good change. So anybody who's trying to change anything, whether it's moving the filing cabinet from one side of the room to the other, or whether it's building a new hospital and you've got to convince all the clinicians that it's going to be the right thing to do. So it works at all levels. Just the problem you apply to each scenario would obviously be different.
And if we were to kind of break down the new book, because that's the most up to date, how have you structured that book? I know you said it's kind of almost choose your own adventure, but is there a structure and the certain types of stories that you wanted to include in that book?
So the first book, the Change Ninja Handbook, is just a choose your own adventure. There's 12 tales and there's some fables, and there's different outcomes and you get points. And you might die if you make the wrong decision too many times. You will lose all of your health score. It's very gamified, and it's based around workplace stories. The second book, The Change Ninja Returns, is all about personal change. Because when it's something that will directly impact on you, it's much harder to make the right decisions. It's much harder to know what to do. It's much easier to procrastinate, as we were chatting about before we started the recording. So it's an idea you've got, but how do you move it forward? Because there's all of these things you're telling yourself you can't do or you don't have time to do. So the second book is much more around the real personal stuff. And it is a true story as well. It's my story of going through a big personal change when I decided to test out what I teach. So if all of these tools I teach and this neuroscience really works for change in the workplace, then it will really work for change in the home life when things aren't going so well. So I used all my own tools and teaching on me, and it worked. So the second book is that story, and it's much more, here's a story, here's what I did, now you have a go at doing it, do some insights and reflection. So it allows you to progress your own personal change as you work through the book, again, gaining points as you go. So it's the same but different.
Love it. I love that aspect of gamification. I'm actually reading a book on that exact topic right now. I've got it just here. I had no idea you were going to talk about this, but anyway, called Play. And it's all around the power of play and just as, how can it impact us in a positive way? And yeah, some really good research in that. So
there's not enough play in the workplace. There needs to be much more.
Yes, for sure. I was speaking to some colleagues and I put a LinkedIn post out there at the start of this year, which was one of my objectives is to bring more play into everything I do this year. So let's see how that goes. And could we then focus on one of those stories to start with then? What was a memorable story for you that you've included in the book?
So a work-based good story. It's right at the start of the book. I was given the role of head of innovation for a huge national services organization, National Health Services organization. Nobody knew why we had to innovate. I mean, you could hazard a guess, but everyone would hazard a different guess. Nobody knew what we were trying to innovate, what areas. Was it in our own organization? Was it external to the organization? But there was a job and there was a title. And there was a need to report to the executive team about what we were going to do and when we were going to do it. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't do a 3-year timeline that was being asked, which you might, typically get asked for any project or program. And somebody did say to me, what will you innovate and when will you innovate it? And it's an impossible task. You just can't do it because you don't know, especially when there's no burning platform, issue that's really needs resolving. And I couldn't do it. And I got into an awful lot of trouble for not doing it because the system demanded it, went into the system, and we had, KPIs and all of that stuff. And at the time, I didn't realize there's different types of change. And quite often we have a methodology, we have a process, and we follow that for any type of change. But there are types of change when you know what you're doing and types of change when you don't know what you're doing. And there are types of change when you know what the outcome is meant to be. And there are types of change when you don't know what the outcome is meant to be. So you've got 4 different types of change. And our organization was following a Prince 2 methodology, which is based on knowing what you're trying to do and knowing how to do it. So it's trying to, square pegs and round holes. So it took me a while to realize why we couldn't do it and why I was getting into trouble a lot. And then I had to go back, I had to learn all this stuff, and then I had to go back and sort of explain just to get, not even getting my point across, but just getting that deeper understanding in the organization of the different types of change and why the methodologies and processes don't fit. And I got so far with that. I didn't get far enough that I wasn't given a KPI for the number of ideas the organization had. So I was given a KPI by my boss. I want to count every month the number of new ideas the organization has, which is just ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything. But the target, I think, was 50. And she just wanted it to be green. And she wanted me to set up all of this auditing system and process to collect the number of ideas, irrelevant of what they were and whether they were any good or whether they would ever be implemented. She didn't care about that. She just wanted the numbers. And so it was green every month, primarily because I have about 10 ideas in the shower every day. So I'd hit the target in week 1. No one cared what the ideas were or if they were good ideas. And I have lots of ideas, most of which are bad. So there's sort of ways of understanding why the system isn't working, but you can't change the system. You need to change people's approach to the system. So back teaching up the way, if you like, around why this doesn't work, but in a way that people get their own insights. And then there's ways of just cheating the system. If it's completely ridiculous and you can get around it and no one cares, then just cheat the system. Don't waste your time auditing all the directors about how many ideas they're collecting in their departments, because it's a complete waste of everyone's time. And my superpower is to expand time. So therefore, I've just given everyone an hour back every week.
I was going to say, now you could just use ChatGPT and say, just give me 50 ideas, and I'm sure it would come up with some good and bad. Yeah. And so is really the approach here thinking more lean? Is it that sort of lean mentality where we're trying to reduce waste as far as we can and trying to, gain efficiencies so that we'll have more time?
It is, but I don't really like those words either because they have associations. You're trying to do agile, you're trying to do lean. We need to make more efficiencies. Why do we need to make more efficiencies? Nobody ever tells you why you need to be more efficient or why you need to lean something. So it's really difficult to get buy-in. If you tell a team, we need to change things because we need to be more efficient, they're going to think, why do we need to be more efficient? Are you telling me we're not efficient already? What about that team over there? Why don't they need to be more efficient? So I don't like those labels because they have different meanings and they put people off the change. But if you can present an issue that there is, that everybody agrees is an issue, and then you work out how best you might do that, yes, it might be more efficient, but that's an outcome. It's not the reason for doing it, if that makes sense. The reason needs to be to fix the issue. If the issue is we have no money, then efficiencies might be one of them, or you might just stop doing some things completely. You might change your whole business model, which isn't an efficiency program. It's not taking 2% off everyone's top line budget. It's saying, actually, we're not going to do that anymore. We're closing down all our offices and everyone's going to work virtually. That's an efficiency, but you wouldn't label it as an efficiency project. You would be shifting your whole structure in your workplace. So I'm always wary of methods and words that have become things in themselves, because as soon as people hear them, they're quite often put off by them because they've had experience that's bad experience of my budgets being cut, of agile not, everyone's just standing up rather than sitting down. It doesn't do anything different. So I'm always quite wary of using those labels unless I'm very, very clear on it.
Yeah. And I know, for example, the area that I work in is agile and agility. And if you look on social media, there's big backlash
Yep.
at the moment around frameworks and methods. And I think as humans, we're so fixated often on the process that it takes over the actual human side of things.
Does.
And I absolutely hear what you're saying on that.
90% of your challenges in the workplace will be people-based. And yet we focus on methodologies and process. It's not the system that's at fault. Changing the system won't change anything because people find a way to say no. They use the system to hide behind. And that's what you're doing. So most of your challenge, if you write down all of your challenge, there'll be a person behind it who's causing that. Your HR might say yes one day, they might say no the next day. It's probably a different person. One person wants to do the change, one person doesn't. And they'll find a reason and an excuse to say no that's within the system. But it's not the system that needs to change. It's the approach we take to people.
And you mentioned a story for home life as well. Could we explore that a bit more?
Yeah, so the second book was based on my entire life blowing up overnight. And I'm into restart again, really, and not knowing what to do and where to go and how to do it. Lots of things like that. My favorite chapter in the second book is called Tinderella, and it was my brief exploration of internet dating. Right?
I thought that, but I wasn't sure, and I wasn't going to say it.
And I had a blast for like 3 weeks. I really enjoyed the process. But I think I enjoyed it because I approached it as I would approach any change, changing jobs, changing careers, thinking about moving to a different part of the country, because it's really easy to get caught up in the whole whirlwind of it and the excitement and, people matching you and that you think are out of your league. You can really get going on lots and lots of dates. I just thought it's going to be energy zapping. It's going to take time. It's going to demotivate me. I just want to go through this process, enjoy it, and hopefully get a good result. So I used a tool. It's one of Eddie's tools called 5 Eyes. And you look at things through different lenses. And it really allows you to hone in on what's really important. So what's really important in a match? And if you're looking, this applies to new jobs and careers as much as a new spouse. If you're looking for something new that you've not had before and a real change, you don't know what you're looking for because it's new. You know what you don't want, but it's really hard to see what you do want because you've not done it before. And if you start to close that down too early with it must have X, Y, and Z, then you're closing down all of your opportunities. When actually you want to say, I don't want this. And this is sort of the area I'm going to, but I'm not going to be really specific and close things down because you really want to put out a big search and get the right thing. So I use that and looking at things like really zoning in, slowing things down, thinking what else might be true if messages didn't ring true or if somebody might be, and using my gut instinct as well. I think gut instinct is often missed in the workplace and it's really good to follow. But really looking at things in a very different way because your brain can only make decisions based on what data it's got. And so if you're looking for new, you need to create new data because you don't yet know what that is. So if you're thinking of moving from the city to the country, which is part of book 2 as well, and you'll have all of these fears and anxieties and doubts because you can't really imagine it because you've never done it before. So how do you get the data to convince your brain that this is the right thing to do and reduce the anxieties, worries and fears? And I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts away, but I was only on the apps for 3 weeks. So it worked.
Hey, awesome. I was just thinking about the title of this episode now. It could be sort of how Tinder can teach us about change. I don't know. But
I think the key thing about the two books are different some of the tools overlap, but they're all change management tools. The thing to remember is change is change. And when we go to work, we have a certain way of dealing with change and managing people. And when we're at home, we have a certain way of dealing with change and managing people. You know, we don't speak to kids the same way we speak to our team and vice versa. But we get things done at home that we can't get done at work because we've got better persuasion skills with the kids. So it's pulling at, it's like I can get the kids to unload the dishwasher every day and walk the dog. Why can't I get that person in my team to update that spreadsheet? It's the same persuasion skills, but we don't often overlap them because work's work and home's home. Similarly, at work, you don't get angry. You don't start, well, maybe you do, but you don't start shouting at your colleagues when they've done something you don't like. But at home, you start shouting at your other half or your kids when they've and that just blows up. So you get everyone's unhappy at home because you've come home in a bad mood and you're shouting at everyone, but you wouldn't do that at work. So think about how do you manage that at work to get what you want at work achieved and bring that into the home place. So we have all of these skills and knowledge and techniques and things, but we quite often use them in different places. And we've probably, when we add them all together, got all of the stuff we need. So that's really the essence of the book. Is just because it's a personal thing doesn't mean you can't use this work stuff. And equally, just because it's a work thing doesn't mean you can't bring in your persuasion skills that you use at home. I mean, most people have got their hubby to take the bin out on bin day. How do you do that? How do you get someone at work to update that spreadsheet once a week? So it's the same skills, but we quite often forget because it's two separate environments.
And you mentioned the neuroscience behind change. Could you tell us a bit more about some of the interesting research that you've come across there?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly basic neuroscience that I teach, but a lot of people, particularly people working in change, think they like change. They're like, that's my job. And it's like, well, one, you're not on the receiving end of that change. You're doing it to somebody else. And two, you know all of the data that goes with that change. So you've removed the uncertainty. So you can make a good prediction that it's going to be a good outcome. The brain is designed to dislike change, whatever anyone tells you. Because change is uncertain. So mostly something new comes along. You don't know if it's going to be a good outcome for you. So your brain can't predict that you're going to be safe. And so it tells you to run. It's the same brain as running from saber-toothed tigers in the hunter-gatherer days. And when that happens, and it all happens really, really quickly, so someone comes along saying, we're going to change all of your data processing systems. Your brain's like, I don't know if this is going to be a good thing, this AI thing, am I going to be out of work? Instantly, your brain scanned all of that data it knows, decided it could be bad. It doesn't know, it can't predict it's going to be good. So to save you, it will decide it's bad. And when it does that, it switches off your logical thinking and switches on your emotions. And so you start responding emotionally. And I don't mean you're running down the corridor crying, but you've got the fight and flight thing going on and all those chemicals going on, the churn in your tummy. And that means you're responding emotionally, and you can't respond logically when your emotions switched on that way. So if you're angry and somebody tells you to calm down, it doesn't work, does it? Because you're emotionally responding. So that happens when you're faced with change, when there's uncertainty and your brain can't predict it's going to be good, it will do that. So that's going on all the time in the workplace and at home. And when you start to realize that, you can start to notice it's happening, which means you can pause it. You can do some really simple hacks to pause it, whether it's breathing techniques or just noticing it and just saying, I'm feeling quite angry about this, or I'm feeling quite anxious. It reduces the level of emotion, which means your brain logic comes back on. And you can start thinking about, okay, how will I respond to this? But that's where all of those things at work that are getting in your way, the challenges, are probably stemming from. Someone's brain has told them, this could be bad for me, so I'm going to say no. That's the equivalent of running away for safety. And you're doing it subconsciously, and it happens instantly. So knowing that means you can start to shift how you think about things and respond to things. And how you can avoid triggering that in other people if you are leading change.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I do a talk on communication, and there's a flow chart that I created, which was all around the process of being uncomfortable and what happens in the brain and all of the different aspects of the brain that all get triggered. And it's really interesting, isn't it? How it only takes a split second, but our brain goes through all of these different processes internally. But to ourselves, we don't really appreciate what's just happened.
And that's the thing, the expanding time thing. Your brain, when you're thinking about things, it uses a lot of energy, and your brain doesn't want to use energy. So it automates as much as possible. So when this change comes along, it basically just scans what's in your database, pulls it all together, and predicts an outcome really quickly. It's not thinking, oh, if that happens, then that might happen, then that might happen. That could be okay. It's not doing all of that processing because it's too energy. It uses too much energy, and it doesn't want to, which is why it happens so quickly. And it makes a decision for you. And it's really hard to challenge your own brain. Because it's not someone else that's told you the answer. It's you that's told you the answer. So just having that basic understanding of how the brain's working can allow you to intercept that thinking. Say, I'm feeling bad about this because the brain has made this assumption based on what it knows, and it doesn't know any of this. So, and that the second book has lots and lots of tools for how to shift that thinking and get you out of that space and back into thinking a bit more logically, which can lead you down the road of really good change that is still uncertain, but removing the doubts and the anxieties that go with it.
I really like your point about the data side of things, in that when we're in a situation and we have the data, it's much easier for us to make that decision. And in a way, that feeling uncomfortable, it's reliant on that data, because if we, for example, I don't know, been volunteered to speak in front of 100 people and we've never done that before, the brain's kind of looking through its database thinking, when have you ever done this before? Here's some risks that are involved here, and this could be quite tricky. And the brain's kind of going into this fight or flight mode, as you mentioned. But each time we do get it slightly uncomfortable, we're adding to that database. And hopefully then, as we build up those uncomfortable experiences over time, we start to become a little bit more comfortable with those similar situations.
We do, because we then do the situation, we go on stage, everybody cheers us, we've now got good data.
Yes.
So the next time it happens, your brain's saying, oh, this, you might fall over, you might say the wrong thing, you might blah, 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 blah. But also you might get that round of applause that was really good and made you feel good. So you've got the associated feel-good factors. And that's one way to trick the brain, is if you've never been on stage before and you've got to go and you're full of anxiety and doubt and your brain's doing that, is to notice it and notice your brain's made that prediction for you. It wasn't a conscious choice. You haven't gone through it as a process. It's just instantly done it to save energy. And then what you need to do is imagine you've just given that talk, and imagine the applause and the laughter. Imagine the whole thing through it and how you're feeling and the euphoria of coming off stage because everyone said it was great. Everyone's coming up and patting you on the back after. Everyone's bought your book while you've been talking. So just picture that and really visualize it. Picture the room, look at the lights, look at the people smiling and laughing and clapping at the end. And that's creating data for your brain to say, oh, this is a good thing. So it might be false data, but most of the other data is false as well, because it's not based on real experience. So you need to create the future and live the future, and your brain will start to predict that it's going to be a good outcome. So you can really trick your brain if you put your mind to it.
And so a lot of the work that I do is training people, but also facilitating lots of workshops. And I know a lot of people listening are using that facilitation skill. So if you're in a situation where you do have a group of people and they're really struggling to change or support certain ideas, and you want some form of transformation to occur, are there any tips and tricks you could offer for that facilitator, and any tools that you've come across?
Oh, lots of tools, which we don't have time for today. They are all in the book. I would take it back to, what is the issue we're trying to solve? what is the purpose of this workshop? What is the problem that we need a solution for? And just make sure everybody's agreed on the core issue that needs a resolution. And that can work for projects, programs, workshops, whatever it is. Sometimes you're facilitating a workshop and nobody wants to be there. They've just been told to be there. So you need to take it back to, well, is the problem that you don't want to be here? And why don't you want to be here? And get back to what, and you'll nail this on that it will come back to an actual issue that you can then move forward with. I always build in time. If I think I'm going to hit a problem like that in a workshop, I always add in half an hour in my agenda so that I can actually take that time out to do it. And there is a chapter in the first book, which was based at Edinburgh Zoo, where this happened to me. It was a 2-day workshop. I didn't really have a say over the agenda, but I was asked to facilitate it. And I knew it was going to fail because I knew the people in the room didn't want to be there. And I knew they had a gripe that they needed to get out. But I didn't have much choice around. This is one of the reasons I left the health service, because people didn't listen to facilitators who knew what they were talking about. And the first day was an absolute disaster because they didn't want to be there. There was lots of griping and complaining, and they wouldn't do the exercises that we'd planned. So I had to redo the next day, put some extra time in for the next day, started it again. So we're going to do yesterday again. And they said, there's no point. We've already done it. So I turned it back on them. I was like, well, what? You're expensive. Yeah, I'm just me. There's 40 of you and you're on big wages. So this is an expensive day. What do you want to do for the rest of the day? And I let them tell me what they wanted out of the day. And then it went really, really smoothly. So sometimes I think you have to put it back on a group, but have that time built in, be ready for it, and make sure you nail what the issue is that you need to then move forward with. And it might be different to where you started. But there's lots of tools in the book, that kind of thing. And that's quite often, I always start a session with hopes and fears. What are your fears about this workshop, this meeting? Let's get rid of them. What hopes have you got? If you could go away skipping down the corridor in an hour's time, what would we have done? And that informs the agenda. And then you've got everybody aligned. The fears have gone, so everyone's feeling safe and everybody's aligned on the agenda. And I always joke, if this is a rubbish meeting, it's your fault, not mine, because you've come up with the agenda. But I'm prepared, so I kind of know what they're going to come up with. But it gets rid of those gripes that people have that they want to get out because you've got rid of them in the fears. The person that's always complaining in a meeting, it will quieten them down because you've got rid of that everyone else. So getting that alignment right at the start can really, really help with that. And you'll know early if you're going to, it will give you forewarning that some bits of the day aren't the right thing to do. So move that further down the agenda and then rethink it over lunchtime. So it gives you a bit of breathing space and thinking space to readjust your day.
Yeah, I love that. The hopes and fears activity. It's a great temperature check because, as you mentioned, otherwise you're blindsided, aren't you? You dive into something and actually there's things that are niggling at people that really, if they have the opportunity just to vent for a little while, it can be a bit of a therapy session for them as well. Yeah. Just to say, let me just get my voice heard, and then I'm going to sit back down and I'm going to be a good citizen in the workshop. So that's a really good one. Now, a really big question for me is we're seeing obviously AI really growing and becoming something that's hopefully this year going to be a little bit more useful than it has been. I feel like we were given a present when ChatGPT came along. It's like at Christmas, you get a gift and we unwrapped it.
Oh, did you get both my books for Christmas?
I should do.
Sorry.
I will do now. I will do. And it became this novel thing and everybody started playing with it. We were all having a really good time, really happy and jovial. And then toward the end of last year, I think things started to get serious. And I know a lot of organizations now are talking serious about bringing AI into the workplace and using AI agents, these additional support mechanisms that will be able to help us do our jobs better. And so I guess where I'm going with this is, as AI is getting more and more useful, there's going to be a moment for many of us in terms of our own work and our own jobs to rethink perhaps, how do we change? How do we evolve? Do we need to build new skills? Do we need to go into new directions? How can we help people that are in that situation? Or how can we prepare for that? Are there things we could do? Or is it something that when the time comes, we're going to have to deal with it somehow?
I think it probably depends on how the AI is being used. My one thing is, I really don't like it when technology dictates to humans how humans should be and behave. And you might not realize it, but your phone, that thing in your hand, that's not been around that many years. What is it, 15 years or something? The iPhone might not even be that long. It dictates so much of our behavior. And it wasn't a thing that matched into how humans behave and what humans want to do. It forced us to change our behavior. And AI could do that as well. So my rallying call is don't be dictated to by the technology. Use the technology to help you be more human. And I think if organizations and people bringing AI in to help in the workplace took that as a strap line, then it could be really useful. But if we use it to dictate how we do and run the business, then it's going to be really demotivating for so many people. So don't let the technology dictate how we work and behave. Use it to enhance how we're human.
I think you're right with the telephone. I put a post out the other day on LinkedIn where I drew a little dog, which is my dog Milo, and I drew a phone and somebody surfing social media, and there's a bit of humor, quirky humor, to say actually dogs build better connections than social media. Because I get to speak to so many people on my dog walks that I would never normally speak to on social media. Yeah. It's very superficial often, isn't it?
Yeah. So, it has its place and it's useful and it can be entertaining, but when it dictates how you live and be your life, that's technology telling us how we should be human, and actually we should be using it to enhance what we want to do. I think my second point as well is because I do write a lot, and I know people are starting to use AI to write LinkedIn blogs and things like that. And yes, it can be quite useful and it can save time, but really it's just diluting everything. Because if you're not putting real thought and effort into writing a thought piece that you think is useful, then you're just really, it's just pulling data from all the data it has, and it becomes a bit blah. But it just suggests that you don't really like writing as well. Writing is an art form, and to start to you might use it at the end just to see if it can, enhance what you've written, spell check, that kind of thing, an enhanced spell check type thing. But when we start to just plug in some ideas and see what it churns up and posts it, it's just adding more diluted rubbish to what's, a massive information. And then the next round, we'll pull in all of that information. So, in 10 years' time, we've become, what's that film, Idiocracy? Because so much is diluted and bland and has no meaning at all, because it's just a scraping of itself. I think we'll lose an awful lot. So, yes, it could save time if you're writing things, but you're losing the art form of writing and the pleasure of writing and getting it wrong and having to sit and think and ponder. So don't be in a rush to churn things out with AI would be a second rallying call.
Brilliant. And like my daughter's really creative. She's currently doing a GCSE art, and I look at the paintings that she's producing now and they just blow my mind. And on the flip side, we see people knocking up images in an instant with some of the cool AI tools out there. But like you say, there's nothing more enjoyable than the experience of doing it.
Yeah.
I was listening to a software developer recently, and I used to be a software developer, not a very good one, but just the joy of software development. It's about discovering and challenging yourself. It's almost like play in a way. You're setting yourself little puzzles and challenges and you're trying to get around them. And yes, AI could probably do it in an instant, but the pleasure of just going through that pain is actually really rewarding. And where will we stop with this? You know, many junior developers might be struggling because all of a sudden organizations say, well, we can do the base level stuff, you know, with this new technology. But it's that grind that helps you fall in love with something, isn't it? And builds that passion as well. So super important.
So yeah, it's just use it to enhance what you do. I was involved in a project in the health service, which was using, I mean, it would have been fairly basic AI back then, but it was using space technology to scan images to look for cancers. And it can do it at speed, and it can scan it from different ways and look at it in different ways, which would take a clinician much longer to do per patient. So that's freeing up time for the clinician to really focus on the things that are showing up and working out what to do with the patient. So that kind of thing is enhancing his job. It's taking out a fairly mundane task, which when he's tired or she's tired, could miss something really important. And it's like saying, here's some results that you need to take a closer look at. So that's a good enhancement. But using it to then diagnose and then treat, you're missing out all of the things that, because we're human and everyone's different and people react differently. So again, it might be a guide, but you still need the human brain to really work through that based on experience. So enhancement's good. Telling us what to do, I think, is less good.
Oh, brilliant. And I always ask one of my humorous questions at the end of the podcast. I didn't give you any pre-warning on this one, Tammy, so this was coming raw. But if you could have any superpower to eliminate something from the world of work, what would that be?
Oh, it'd be getting rid of time-wasting activities. So I said enhancing time. How much time do we spend on absolutely pointless, valueless stuff? There is so much. That paper that you need to write again, that email that you spend 2 hours working over, clearing out inboxes. I just wrote a blog on it today. Why do we clear out our inboxes? You're just moving electrons from one place to another. The bin isn't a real bin, people. It might make you feel good briefly, but so does cocaine, I'm told. Do you know, it's that you get the little hit of having a clear inbox of dopamine, so you feel good, and then it fills up again the next day. Just don't bother. The stuff will just drop to the bottom of the pile. I think my inbox is like 3,000 emails or something. I don't care. Who cares if something isn't there from 2015? So just think about how you spend your time. And a lot of tools in the book provides a way of doing the same thing, like doing 3 things in one go. So there's a tool called 5 Ps, which can help you write a project brief. It can help you write the communication, and it can help you write the difficult emails for your stakeholders. It's one piece of work that has 3 outputs, which will lead to different outcomes. So think about how you're spending your time, because you only have so many hours in the day. And adding in more time is not going to change, you know, working an extra hour. It's not going to make it go away. It's never going away. So we need to be smarter with time and get rid of the valueless tasks. Don't go to the meetings you don't need to be at. People tell me they're at meetings all day and they haven't got time to do their work. Stop going to meetings. You don't need to be at all those meetings. You don't want to miss them in case you miss something. I need to go for an update. Or if you've not got something to do at that meeting and you're on the agenda as a named person, why are you going? You don't need your boss to tell you and give you permission not to go to meetings. Send your apologies. Say, do I really need to be there? I'm busy. Just value your time. And just cut out the stuff that's not adding value.
I used to have a manager who actually did that with me once. I was so overwhelmed. I had so much work to do. And he actually just came over to my desk, went through my calendar and just started deleting stuff out of my calendar and asked the question, do you need to be there? I was like, not really. Okay, well, get rid of that. Get rid of that.
So
he's almost that
a good
voice of reason.
A good story to remember is, have you ever been caught in a traffic jam?
Many times.
And what do you do when you're in the traffic jam?
Well, you just get frustrated.
Get frustrated with the traffic jam. Where's all these cars coming from? Have you ever thought, I am the traffic jam? You're the problem. You're the one on the road sitting in a car blocking the roadways. Nobody ever thinks that. You blame everybody else. So all of this stuff at work that's valueless and causing you loads of grief and making you tired and stressed and anxious, there is a good chance that some of that is actually being caused by you. You've created your own self-imposing deadlines. You go into meetings you really don't need to be at, but you've got FOMO if you don't go. So it kind of starts with you. And it's the same as culture change. If anyone tells me that my organization needs to change its culture, I'm like, well, you are it. So off you go. You are part of that culture. It's not going to change unless you start to change. So it's not for the managers to tell you how to change your culture. Change it within your team. Start doing things differently. It will spread if it works.
Oh, brilliant. And that's such a great way to end this episode. But before we do, Tammy, just give us a reminder about the book and where can people purchase it and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the Change Ninja Handbook and the Change Ninja Returns, both available in all bookstores, online, all of the usual places. Go independent if you can, but it's probably cheaper on the ones that we should avoid without mentioning them. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, so please do get in touch. Connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll send you a message and email and all of that. And I think my calendar's now on LinkedIn, so if people want to chat, they can just book into my calendar and have a chat with me. Lots of training, lots of workshops if you want lunch and learns on neuroscience for change, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And I will be looking at the book as well and ordering it. So
a late Christmas present to yourself.
Yay, there you go. You got another customer. So I will be checking that out for sure. Thank you so much, Tammy. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you and hearing some of your change stories. And I certainly connected with many of those and got my brain thinking about all the things.
You're going to cancel all those meetings now.
I am. And I was just looking at my inbox because I'm still quite old fashioned. I have a Hotmail email address and my kids think I'm uncool, but I've got 176,000 unread emails and now I don't feel so bad anymore.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Don't waste 15 minutes putting them all in the recycle bin because it's still there.
Absolutely. There we go. That's a tip of the day, folks. That's a tip of the day. Well, thank you once again, Tammy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.